Okay, here we go. I'd like to call this public hearing to order. Will the clerk please read the public notice?
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of Jamestown, New York will hold a public hearing regarding the fiscal year 2023 annual action plan. The public hearing will be held at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, June 26, 2023 in the City Council Chambers, 2nd floor, Municipal Building, 200 East 3rd Street, Jamestown, New York. All persons wishing to comment on this matter are invited to speak at this time. Jennifer R. Williams, City Clerk Treasurer. Publication date June 22nd, 2023.
Thank you. Was there any correspondence that we received?
No.
No? Okay. At this time, I'd like to yield time to Crystal Surter to discuss the program.
Thank you. As you are aware, we are in an annual action planning season. Coming to the end of that, we will be submitting our annual action plan in the next couple of days. It's due on the 30th. The annual action plan is a required plan that is required by HUD in order to receive our annual HUD funding allocation. So we are in year 4 of 5 already with regard to the consolidated action plan. So we do a consolidated action plan every 5 years. The annual action plans are the annual subsequent plans that we are required to submit. With that, we have completed our public engagement process. We have our draft annual action plan that has been available for a little over a month now. And we have put together our plan, our project plan list. I can touch on them very, very briefly. Our lead poisoning prevention program, strategic code enforcement, small business development, environmental assessment and remediation, neighborhood target area demolition, owner-occupied emergency repair program, crime awareness prevention, clean neighborhoods, neighborhood target area infrastructure program, ADA improvements, rehabilitation of publicly or privately owned commercial or industrial properties, CDBG, that's our Community Development Block Grant, and Home Administration. That's considered to be a project by HUD, and that gets an allocation for administrative assistance for our staff. And then we have our homeowner occupied rehabilitation program. That's something that is a bit new this year. And then we have our Community Housing Development Organization, or CHODO, set aside, which, as you may recall, we increased from 15%, which is the bare minimum, to 30%. And then home redevelopment program, which I apologize, that is the new program this year. And that will promote redevelopment of vacant buildings and target area neighborhoods for increased quality housing stock. So all of these programs are programs, besides the last one, that we have had along the way, and they came out of our consolidated action plan.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask if there's anyone here who would like to address the hearing.
Doug Champ, 225 Bond Street, Jamestown. I didn't want to have nobody from the community come, so that's why I should have answered those. But I also think I've got some relevant points that I think needs to be looked at. The community development program and the HUD program are very important aspects of this community's future. How we use it, where we spend it, what the proposals are, and ultimately the results. So I know I can't change these as a citizen, but I think it's important that we look at the future in terms of what we're trying to accomplish with what. When I look at something like the Small Business Development Tech Assistance Program, we spend a lot of money from the American Rescue Plan into small business and business incubator and development. That's still out there. The success story of that remains to be seen. So basically with this is an add-on for that kind of thing. I'm suggesting something else, okay, with that fund. To start initiation of a project that I think is very important in the future. It's been even made more so for those who Zoomed the BPU meeting. And our representative, Jeff Russell, who was there, can document that a little bit more. And I would encourage all of you to take the time to look at that. Because the status and the state of energy is going to go under a complete change in terms of cost. As much as, which was cited in that particular meeting, in 2026, 2027, more than $30 a month more in terms of your electric bill. What are we doing about it? Not a whole lot. So I would ask that that money be shifted into what I call the owner-occupied energy use rehab program. As part of the initiative for the future of conversion from gas to electric. Not that I'm a big believer in the ultimate success of electrification, but I do believe that the mandates are there in the housing stock in Jamestown, which has houses at 50 and 60 amp service, are nowhere near ready or available to energize from gas to electricity. I mean, the service capability is not in place. So what's happening is the rates are going to go up and the efficiency in the homes are still in the same place that they've always been. So 200 amp service should be the norm standard. The code requires 100 amp service, and that's nowhere near enough. You have to have a 70 amp breaker just for an electric heat to air exchanger. One breaker, okay? Doesn't mean it's using 70 amps, but the startup, that's what's necessary in understanding electricity. The startup is difficult, maintaining is nominal, and closing down is hard. So these things are important. So that's my suggestion. If we don't do it now, we've got to do it at some point. Rehabilitation of public and private owners, commercial and industrial. I'm not quite sure what public commercial is or public industrial is. And that's $210,000. And I question whether or not that is an appropriate use in a community which has gone through an American Rescue Plan application for similar interest. I would suggest that that money be used to initially create this year and into the future, and build residential model home program for sale, and use application for moderate income ownership. That means if you start the program and it's offered for sale with some of the other leverage programs in the housing program, you then have contributory actions for creating new housing stock, different housing stock. Housing stock that's needed in Jamestown compared to rehabilitation of old housing stock. I lived in a house that was built in 1930, but it's in good shape because I enjoy doing that kind of work. Other people can't. So if we don't do something about building a model house unit, 1,500 square feet, we're in trouble in the future. So what I'm saying, what that would mean then, is that an owner would then be paying a mortgage, and that mortgage would then come back to the city for reuse. Okay? It's like a leverage ownership program to use over and over. Build one, then you build another, and you build another. Pretty soon, 10 years, you got 10 new model houses. Home program. What's the difference between homeowner and rehab program versus home rehab program up above? Are the programs linked? Do they leverage one against the other? Again, what I would suggest, again, a citizen's suggestion is not anything more than that, is to take that program and combine it with what I call the home rehab program to the small residential home build program. What then that would do is give you additional amount of money to not do one, but do two, okay, of these. If we don't do something about energy in the home and home building in this community, we're going to be left with what we have. And what we have doesn't portend a good housing stock for the future, for whoever they may be. So those are my two suggestions. And this is not cut and dry, because you have to submit, you have that. I would ask the city council, ask these questions, not rubber stamp anything, because if you don't know what you're voting on, then I don't know how you can vote on it. So my question is, can we change these things to look at this? If not now, can we move on these things in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the public hearing? I'll ask a third time, is there anyone else who would like to address the public hearing? Is there anyone from the council who has any questions or comments?
To your point, Mr. Champ, yes, Sweden and other countries are using geothermal.
I'm sorry about hearing that.
European countries, I think it's Sweden or Finland, is using geothermal heat pumps, taking ground source heat at 55 degrees, and they can actually heat as well as cool their homes. The initial cost is very expensive. We haven't come up with a method that makes it cheap and affordable, but I think your ideas are well taken, that there have to be alternative energy looks, and I commend you for bringing it up. I really do, because I think there are other communities that are trying to be more energy efficient using solar and using other things that can try to alleviate the issue of carbon emissions and greenhouse gases, which are affecting the climate. And maybe today's weather event was an indicator of what we can expect in the future because of this. So I do appreciate your thoughts that, we need to not discount any and all ideas that could lead to more energy efficient homes of a varying size that right now aren't necessarily permitted by our zoning code. But we need to be looking at, when we have homeless populations, we have a crisis where people cannot find affordable housing, we need to be looking at all kinds of alternatives to address those issues. So,
Can I respond to that, or was I allowed?
Go ahead, briefly.
Energy use and development is a circle. Inside that circle are consumers. Outside the circle are energy inputs: geothermal, solar, wind, traditional generation, which is the form of power plants 24/7, which are load-based generators. So how we use that energy and why we use it and where we use it is going to be critical to the future of how we electrify things. If we decide electrification is the pathway to the future, then everything you see now is going to have kilowatts versus BTUs. Will we happen that way? It remains to be seen. There's a time frame for it. But geothermal is a connectivity process. It's a stepladder to heating a home. And the geothermal application, it requires a network, a certain amount of square feet, and a certain amount of area for that to work. Community geothermal is another system, which could actually be done in supplemental heat to thermal energy system or a cooling system, which you abandoned some time ago. So all of this works in that framework. It's important to understand that what you do on one end affects the outcome on the other. So I hope that you start something and launch something almost immediately with this electrification application that's being forced on us by the state of New York, whether we want it or not.
Thank you. Any other councilman have questions?
I have a question for Crystal. Under the activity summaries, are these dollar amounts fixed in stone, or can they be passed through to different line items?
There is still time to adjust them.
I didn't think that enough money was appropriated for demolition. That's a personal pet peeve of mine. And then
We are limited in the amount that we can allocate to demolition by HUD, and the full amount that we can allocate
So it's a formula
has been
that
out, yeah.
they put together. And then my second question was the percentages for the different administrations. For the first half, for the CDBG, it's 25%. For the home administration, it's like 11.
Those are fixed as well, yeah,
By
by HUD, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, if not, this hearing is adjourned.
Can we stay here or we gotta go upstairs?
We're gonna-